He offered his last $10 to a stranded woman. Months later, she turned out to be a billionaire and surprised him with the greatest gift of all, her love. What if the difference between lifelong struggle and extraordinary love came down to just $10? For Marcus Reed, that rainy evening showed $10.27 in his account. Rent due in 3 days. Another cut shift at the coffee shop. Then he saw her soaked, searching frantically through her purse at the bus stop. "I can't find my wallet," she whispered, mascara running beneath panicked eyes. Marcus handed over his last $10. "Take this. Get home safe." He couldn't know this simple act would return 1,000-fold, or that this drenched stranger would reappear months later with a secret that would change everything. The alarm blares at 4:30 a.m. Marcus Reed's hand fumbles in darkness, finding his phone between a half-finished sketch of a mahogany bookshelf and a past-due electric bill. Another day begins. His tiny bedroom barely fits the twin mattress on the floor and the makeshift workbench where wood shavings tell the story of late-night passion projects. Through the thin walls, he hears his roommate Diego snoring. The third bedroom sits empty now. Ryan moved out last week without notice, taking any hope of making rent with him. By 5:15, Marcus walks through Seattle's pre-dawn drizzle to Westlake Coffee, where he transforms into the morning shift's reliable barista. He memorizes the regulars' orders, carefully crafts each drink, smiles through exhaustion. The manager notices his bloodshot eyes. "Late night again with your wood stuff?" Marcus nods. His manager doesn't understand that those hours with his carving tools aren't a hobby, they're oxygen. At 2 p.m., he trades the coffee-stained apron for 3 hours of sleep before his security guard shift begins at the downtown parking garage. From 6 p.m. to midnight, he paces concrete floors, the fluorescent lights humming overhead as he guards other people's possessions. Growing up in 8 different foster homes taught Marcus 2 things: how to survive alone and how to spot the pain in others' eyes. The system bounced him between families like an unwanted package, some kind, some cruel, none permanent. His caseworker once told him he had too much heart for a throwaway kid. He's carried those words for 15 years. His talent emerges in the remnants of night, when his roommates sleep. With salvaged wood and second-hand tools, Marcus creates pieces that whisper of something better. A handcrafted side table, a delicately inlaid jewelry box. Furniture websites and magazines fill his browser history, studies in craftsmanship he can't afford to learn properly. The apartment tells its own story. Water stains mapping the ceiling, mismatched furniture collected from curbs, the persistent smell of mildew fighting against the wood polish Marcus uses on his creations. The kitchen faucet's constant drip has become white noise. The landlord stopped answering calls months ago. Last summer, Marcus sold a coffee table to a cafe owner for $200, barely covering materials, but validating something deep within him. The owner called it artistry. Marcus still visits sometimes, watching customers set their mugs on his creation, running their fingers along the grain he spent weeks perfecting. Diego and the now-departed Ryan never understood his dedication to woodworking. "You're killing yourself for fancy furniture nobody around here can afford," Diego often says. He might be right. Back from the bus stop, his rain-soaked jacket dripping onto the worn carpet, Marcus sits on his bed and opens his banking app one more time. The glow illuminates his tired face as the balance loads. Available funds, $0. He shuts his eyes, letting his head rest against the wall. Tomorrow's another day. He has no regrets about the $10. Some kindnesses you can't put a price on when you've known what it means to have nothing. But the rent is still due Monday. 3 weeks after the bus stop, Marcus barely remembers the woman's face. Life has a way of burying small kindnesses beneath avalanches of new problems. Diego announces his departure over cold pizza one Tuesday night. Got a job in Portland, leaving Friday. No apology, no concern for the rent math that won't work without him. Just a shrug and one less person to split the utilities. The apartment feels hollower now. 2 empty bedrooms, double the rent burden. Marcus pins his latest paycheck to the refrigerator, as if staring at the insufficient numbers might somehow multiply them. At Westlake Coffee, the manager calls Marcus into the office before his shift. Corporate says we need to cut hours. I fought for you, but everyone's getting reduced. You're down to 24 hours weekly. Her eyes offer sympathy her words can't fix. 24 hours won't cover food, let alone rent. That night at the security job, Marcus calculates figures on discarded receipts. Even working both jobs, he's short $300. The security company won't increase his hours. They've already filled the schedule with newer guards willing to work for less. The woodshop owner lets Marcus store some pieces in the back room. "These are good," he says, running weathered fingers across Marcus's latest creation, a nightstand with intricate inlay work. "Too good for what I can pay you. You should be selling these somewhere fancy. Somewhere fancy requires contacts, connections, a last name that opens doors. Marcus has none of these things." Then the pipe bursts. Marcus wakes to water seeping under his bedroom door, soaking the edge of his favorite projected cherry wood desk he's been crafting for months, hoping to sell for enough to catch up on bills. Water warps the wood before he can save it. The landlord sends a plumber who fixes the immediate leak but warns of more trouble. Whole building's plumbing is shot. Band-aid on a bullet wound, what I just did. The water damage requires replacing sections of drywall. The landlord refuses to pay. "Not in the budget. Your renter's insurance should cover it." Marcus doesn't have renter's insurance. He spends a day cutting away soggy drywall, the apartment filling with dust and the smell of mildew. That night, fever hits pneumonia, the clinic doctor says. The prescription costs $68 he doesn't have. He pays with a credit card already maxed out. Lying in bed, shivering despite blankets, Marcus stares at the water-stained ceiling. His phone chimes with a rent reminder. His bank app shows overdrawn accounts. His body aches with sickness and exhaustion. The woman at the bus stop has vanished completely from his thoughts now. Just another moment of kindness lost in the wreckage of a life coming apart at the seams. Something has to change. Something has to give. Marcus's laptop wheezes to life, the fan rattling like it might give up any moment. 3 months since giving away his last $10, and things have only deteriorated. The eviction notice arrived yesterday. Final warning, court date already set. He logs into his email, deleting job rejections without opening them. 26 applications last week alone. 4 interviews that ended with, "We'll call you." Nobody calls anymore. The wood shop closed permanently last month. Economic downturn, the owner said, pressing a worn $50 bill into Marcus's hand on the final day. "Wish I could do more. You've got real talent, son." The security company cut him after he called in sick 3 days straight with pneumonia. The coffee shop kept him on, but at 15 hours weekly, barely enough for groceries. certainly not rent. His latest creation, a walnut and maple end table, sits in the corner of his emptying apartment. Beautiful and useless. No one to buy it, nowhere to sell it. Between spam messages and past due notices, an email subject line catches his eye. Invitation to interview. Senior craftsman position. Lockwood and Hayes, fine furniture. He almost deletes it, assuming it's another scam, but something makes him click. Dear Mr. Reed, your craftsmanship has been brought to our attention by someone who believes you possess exceptional talent and character. Lockwood and Hayes is seeking a senior craftsman for our custom furniture division, and we would like to interview you for this position. The starting salary is $78,000 annually, with full benefits and access to our workshop facilities. Please contact our office at your earliest convenience to schedule an interview. Regards, Eleanor Whitman, Human Resources Director, Lockwood and Hayes, Fine Furniture. Marcus reads it 3 times. Lockwood and Hayes. He recognizes the name from woodworking magazines he could never afford to subscribe to. They create furniture for celebrities, tech billionaires, foreign dignitaries. His first thought, someone's cruel joke. His second, wrong email address. He Googles the company. They're real, prestigious, elite. His hands shake as he dials the number. Lockwood and Hayes. How may I direct your call? The receptionist's voice sounds like money-polished, confident. My name is Marcus Reed. I received an email about an interview for a craftsman position. Papers rustle. Ah, Mr. Reed. Yes, we've been expecting your call. Ms. Whitman would like to meet you tomorrow at 10 a.m. if that's convenient. Tomorrow? Yes, I can do that. He pauses. Can I ask who recommended me? I haven't applied anywhere recently. I'm afraid that information is confidential, Mr. Reed. Please, I need to know. I don't understand how this happened. The receptionist's voice softens slightly. All I can tell you is that someone important was impressed by your character, and apparently your woodworking skills. They were quite insistent we contact you. After ending the call, Marcus stands in his nearly empty apartment, trying to make sense of it. His work has been hidden away in a failing shop and this crumbling apartment. His character hasn't been witnessed by anyone who could possibly have this kind of influence. He studies the eviction notice on his counter, then looks back at his computer screen where the email still glows. Who could possibly have seen anything in him worth this opportunity? The only new person he's met in months was a rain-soaked woman at a bus stop who never even told him her name. The Lockwood and Hayes building rises 40 stories of gleaming glass and steel in downtown Seattle, reflecting morning clouds like a massive mirror. Marcus stands across the street, his only decent shirt ironed 3 times. Thrift store tie knotted too tight at his throat. His weathered boots, there was no money for proper dress shoes, feel impossibly heavy as he crosses toward the revolving doors. The security guard studies his ID with suspicion. Appointment? Interview with Eleanor Whitman. Something changes in the guard's manner. 15th floor, sir. They're expecting you. The elevator whispers upward, its polished walls reflecting a stranger. A man trying to look composed while his heart hammers against borrowed confidence. Marcus had spent the night researching the company, studying woodworking terminology rarely used in his self-taught career. He'd practiced answers to questions about joinery techniques, finishing methods, sustainable sourcing. Now, rising above the city, he realizes he's entered a world where even the air feels expensive. The elevator opens to a reception area where wood and glass blend in perfect harmony. Cherry panels line walls adorned with photographs of furniture that belongs in museums. A receptionist guides him to a conference room where floor-to-ceiling windows frame the sound like a living painting. "Water? Coffee?" she offers. "Water, please." His mouth has gone dry. 3 people await him. Eleanor Whitman, silver-haired and elegant. Thomas Lockwood himself, the company's founder, now in his 70s, and a younger woman introduced as Vanessa Hayes, the founder's daughter and current CEO. Marcus sets his portfolio on the table, photographs of pieces he's built, sketches of designs unrealized. The leather portfolio itself was a splurge at Goodwill yesterday, $7 he couldn't spare but needed to spend. "Tell us about this piece," Lockwood begins, pointing to Marcus's favorite creation, a coffee table with inlaid maple leaves seeming to drift across walnut planks. For 15 minutes they discuss woodworking. Marcus finds his voice growing steadier as he explains his techniques, his limitations, his aspirations. They nod approvingly at his knowledge of wood movement, his preference for traditional joinery, his commitment to finishing details. Then the conversation shifts unexpectedly. "Mr. Reed," Vanessa Hayes says, leaning forward, "what matters most to you when creating a piece?" He hesitates. "That it lasts, that it serves its purpose while bringing some beauty into someone's life." Eleanor Whitman makes a note. "And what about beyond woodworking? What guides your decisions in daily life?" The question feels out of place for a job interview. Marcus searches for the professional answer but finds only truth. "Making it through mostly, doing what's right when I can." Thomas Lockwood's gaze intensifies. "Let me pose a scenario. You're having financial difficulties, serious ones. You encounter a stranger who needs help. What do you do?" Marcus feels a chill. The question is too specific, too familiar. He wonders momentarily if this entire interview is an elaborate prank. "It would depend on whether I could help, I suppose." "But if helping meant sacrificing something you needed yourself," Lockwood presses. Marcus meets his eyes. "We've all been stuck somewhere needing a hand. Sometimes you just have to be that hand, even when it costs you." The 3 interviewers exchange glances. Something unspoken passes between them. Eleanor closes her notebook. "One final question, Mr. Reed. When could you start?" "Start?" "The position," Vanessa clarifies. "We'd like you to begin as soon as possible." Marcus blinks. "Don't you need to interview other candidates?" Thomas Lockwood stands, extending his hand. "We've found exactly who we're looking for." Outside the windows, Seattle's persistent rain begins again, tapping against the glass like applause. The Lockwood and Hayes workshop sprawls across the entire 5th floor of their building, a cathedral of craftsmanship that leaves Marcus speechless his first morning. 30-foot ceilings, north-facing windows flooding the space with perfect, shadowless light. Tools arranged with reverent precision, some he recognizes, others so specialized he can only guess their purpose. "That's your station," Thomas Lockwood says, indicating a massive workbench of quarter-sawn white oak. "Custom-built for each craftsman. You'll adjust it to your preferences." Marcus runs his hand across the satiny surface, disbelieving. His fingertips, calloused from years of working with inadequate tools, sense perfection in the wood. This single workbench is worth more than everything he's ever owned. By afternoon, he's assigned his first project, a writing desk, for a client in Nantucket. The specifications allow creative interpretation within parameters of size and wood species. When Marcus questions this freedom, his supervisor laughs. "You're not at some production shop now. Clients come to us because they want the individual craftsman's vision. That's why we hired you. 2 weeks in, Marcus receives his first paycheck. The amount staggers him after taxes, more than he earned in 2 months at both previous jobs combined. He pays his outstanding rent and debts the same day, clearing his financial slate with a few electronic transfers that dissolve years of constant anxiety. He moves to a small but sun-filled apartment within walking distance of work, buys proper tools for a modest home workshop, opens a savings account, sleeps through the night for the first time in years. In the employee break room, Marcus overhears 2 colleagues discussing the company's structure. "Haven't seen Alexandra in months," one says, lowering his coffee mug. "London, I think." "Paris now," the other corrects. The Milan Commission kept her there through spring, then straight to the French Restoration Project. "Who's Alexandra?" Marcus asks, joining them. They exchange glances. "Alexandra Chen. Founded the company with Lockwood 20 years ago. Design genius, completely revolutionary approach to traditional forms." The older craftsman lowers his voice. "Never comes to the workshop anymore, but reviews every single hire personally. Has final say on who joins the team." "She reviewed my application?" Marcus asks. "If you're standing here, she did more than review it. Alexandra only approves craftsmen whose work speaks to her personally. The rest get rejected, no matter what Lockwood says." That evening, Marcus researches Alexandra Chen online. Limited information, no social media presence, few photographs. Articles describe her as brilliantly reclusive, uncompromising, and the most influential furniture designer of her generation. Nothing indicates why she would take interest in his amateur creations. In his new workspace at home, Marcus begins a personal project, a jewelry box of black walnut and bird's eye maple, more intricate than anything he's previously attempted. The design flows effortlessly now that worry no longer consumes his mental energy. His phone chimes with a text from a number he doesn't recognize. "Your second quarter review is scheduled with Ms. Chen personally. She rarely meets new craftsmen this early. You've impressed someone important." Marcus stares at the message, the mystery deepening. The elegant box takes shape beneath his hands as questions form in his mind. Who is Alexandra Chen, really? And what does she know about a rainy bus stop 3 months ago? 4 months into his position at Lockwood and Hayes, Marcus still feels the occasional spark of disbelief. Sometimes he'll pause mid-cut, chisel in hand, and remind himself that this isn't some elaborate dream, that the workshop around him, the steady income, the creative respect, are all genuinely his reality now. The invitation arrives on heavy cream cardstock with embossed lettering. The Robertson Foundation Annual Charity Gala, benefiting arts education in underserved communities, featuring exclusive furniture exhibition by Lockwood and Hayes. Vanessa Hayes stops by his workstation the same afternoon. "Your writing desk for the Seattle Symphony will be showcased. We'd like you to attend and speak about your design process to potential clients." Marcus looks up from the dovetail joint he's perfecting. "Me? At a gala?" "You're the craftsman. The story matters as much as the piece itself." Her expression softens slightly. Black tie. Company will cover the tuxedo rental. The grand ballroom of the Olympic Hotel gleams with old-world opulence crystal chandeliers, casting prismatic light across marble floors, champagne flowing endlessly from silver trays, Seattle's wealthiest citizens dressed in couture and jewels that could fund small nations. Marcus stands beside his creation, a writing desk of figured maple and wenge, with brass inlays that follow the wood's natural grain like lightning captured in amber. The piece represents 2 months of his life, every curve and joint executed with precision that still surprises him. The $42,000 price tag attached to it remains incomprehensible. Wealthy patrons approach with questions. Marcus answers carefully, explaining his choices of wood species and joinery techniques. The language of craftsmanship comes naturally, the language of high society does not. He declines a third glass of champagne, knowing the fine line between confidence and loosened inhibition. The negative space creates visual lightness, he explains to a software executive interested in commissioning a dining table. The strength comes from the structure, not mass. The executive nods, impressed. Your understanding of balance is remarkable. Between conversations, Marcus observes this foreign world, the casual display of wealth, the practiced laughter, the subtle evaluations occurring behind air kisses and handshakes. Despite his tuxedo perfectly tailored, not rented after all, he feels the persistent awareness of not belonging. Across the room, something shifts in the crowd's energy. Conversations pause momentarily as a woman enters, her arrival creating ripples of recognition. She moves with graceful authority, dressed in a structured black gown that suggests architectural precision rather than mere fashion. Her dark hair falls in a simple but elegant style that frames a face of striking beauty. Something about her snags in Marcus's consciousness, a familiarity he can't immediately place. The woman navigates the room with practiced ease, accepting greetings from those who approach, but continuing her deliberate path across the ballroom. With growing certainty, Marcus realizes she's moving toward him. 10 feet away, their eyes lock. 5 feet away, recognition hits him like physical force. The rain-soaked woman from the bus stop. The stranger he'd given his last $10 to, now transformed, or rather, revealed in her true form. She stops before him, a subtle smile playing at the corners of her mouth. Up close, there's no doubt. The same eyes that had thanked him wordlessly that rainy afternoon. Your writing desk is extraordinary, Mr. Reed, she says, her voice cultured, but with the same gentle tone he remembers. The joinery at the drawer corners completely invisible, old-world craftsmanship with contemporary design sensibility. Marcus struggles to reconcile the two versions of this woman colliding in his mind. You know my work? I know all my craftsmen's work. She extends her hand. Alexandra Chen, though I believe we've met before, under less formal circumstances. The ballroom seems to tilt beneath Marcus's feet. Alexandra Chen, billionaire tech entrepreneur, founder of Chen Innovations, the elusive co-founder of Lockwood and Hayes, who personally approves every hire, the woman he'd last seen counting out damp bus fare from his crumpled $10 bill. You were, he begins, unable to complete the sentence. Her smile deepens, reaching her eyes. Yes, I was, and you were the answer to a question I'd been asking for a very long time. The gala swirls around them, but Alexandra guides Marcus toward a secluded alcove where the cacophony of wealth and pretension dims to a manageable murmur. A passing waiter offers champagne. Alexandra declines with a practiced gesture. Marcus hasn't touched his glass since the recognition struck him. You look like you've seen a ghost, she says, her composure both intimidating and familiar. I'm trying to understand, Marcus manages. That day at the bus stop, Alexandra's perfectly maintained exterior softens slightly. I should explain. Will you walk with me? They move to the terrace overlooking Seattle's glittering skyline. The November air carries a sharp chill, clearing the space of other guests. Here, 15 stories above the city, Marcus can see the very bus stop where their paths first crossed, now tiny and insignificant below. 3 years ago, Alexandra begins, I realized I'd lost touch with reality. My company went public. The wealth became, she gestures vaguely toward the horizon, excessive. I found myself surrounded by people who wanted something from me. My perspective became dangerously narrow. She leans against the stone balustrade, suddenly looking less like a billionaire and more like the rain-soaked woman he'd encountered. So I started what my board of directors calls my eccentric hobby. Once a month, I dress in ordinary clothes, leave my security detail behind, and spend a day using public transportation, visiting grocery stores, laundromats, coffee shops, places where real life happens. Marcus listens, his champagne untouched, condensation beading on the crystal. That day I'd been riding buses for hours, observing, listening. The rain wasn't planned. A small, genuine smile crosses her face. Neither was my wallet being stolen earlier that morning. I had actually found myself in authentic need. And I happened to be there, Marcus says, understanding beginning to dawn. You didn't just happen to be there, Mr. Reed. You were there, and you did something extraordinary. You gave everything you had to a complete stranger. It was $10, he says quietly. It was sacrifice, she corrects. I've had wealthy executives court my business for years with expensive gifts that cost them nothing in relative terms. You gave what you couldn't afford to give. Marcus feels an uncomfortable heat rising in his chest, not quite anger, not quite embarrassment. So, I became part of your social experiment? Alexandra's expression shifts, registering his discomfort. Not initially. I simply couldn't stop thinking about your kindness. It haunted me. So I found out who you were. You investigated me. The words fall between them, heavy with implication. Yes, she admits without apology. I learned about your craftsmanship, your struggle, your character. I didn't just hand you a job. I saw your talent deserved recognition. Marcus turns away, looking out at the city where, months ago, he'd been drowning in debt and desperation. The same city where he now holds a prestigious position, financial security, creative fulfillment. I should be grateful, he says finally, but you're not entirely. I'm trying to reconcile the woman at the bus stop with... He gestures at her gown, the gala behind them, the empire she commands. All this, I'm trying to understand being watched, evaluated, without knowing. The wind shifts, carrying music from inside. Alexandra doesn't fill the silence. Was any of it real? He asks finally. The job offer, the praise for my work? All of it, she answers, meeting his gaze directly. Your talent is genuine. My recognition of it is genuine too. Marcus nods slowly, still processing. And now? Now, Alexandra says, we find out who we really are to each other, without rain or pretense between us. The first time Alexandra visits the workshop after the gala, she arrives with Thomas Lockwood, ostensibly reviewing quarterly designs. Her gaze drifts repeatedly toward Marcus's workstation, where he shapes the curved back of a rocking chair, hands steady, despite his awareness of her presence. The second time, 1 week later, she brings a client a tech CEO commissioning a conference table. I'd like Mr. Reed to be the lead craftsman on this project, she tells the client, but her eyes find Marcus's. He has an exceptional understanding of how wood speaks. By the third visit, the pretenses grow thinner. She arrives alone on a Tuesday afternoon, dressed in simple black trousers and a cashmere sweater, her security detail waiting discreetly by the elevators. I'm interested in the progress of the rocking chair, she says, though the piece had been completed days earlier. The other craftsmen exchange knowing glances as she spends 40 minutes discussing wood grain orientation with Marcus, her fingers occasionally brushing against the cherry armrests he's shaping. The workshop becomes accustomed to her presence, the billionaire who suddenly remembers her passion for hands-on design after years of absence. If anyone suspects other motivations, they keep such thoughts private. On her 5th visit, she arrives as the workday ends. "Would you have dinner with me?" she asks Marcus directly, the workshop empty save for them, "to discuss your vision for the Chen Innovations Commission." They both recognize the transparent excuse. There is no Chen Innovations Commission. They sit across from each other at a small neighborhood restaurant, her choice, not the upscale establishments where she's regularly photographed. She arrives in an ordinary car she drives herself, wearing jeans and a simple blouse that would never catch a paparazzo's attention. "You're not what I expected," Marcus admits over pasta in a quiet corner booth. "What did you expect?" She twirls linguine around her fork with practiced ease. "Someone more intimidating. The business magazines call you ruthlessly brilliant and pathologically focused." Alexandra laughs, a genuine sound he hasn't heard before. "Those are professional personas cultivated for boardrooms, necessary armor." She hesitates. "What you're seeing now is closer to who I am when not surrounded by people who want something." "And what do I want?" The question escapes before he can reconsider its implication. Her dark eyes study him. "That's what makes you interesting, Marcus. I'm still not entirely certain." Their conversations evolve over weeks, dinners that stretch into 3-hour explorations of ideas, morning coffees before the workshop opens, a Sunday afternoon at the art museum where she knows the quiet corners away from recognizing eyes. She tells him about growing up in Oakland, the daughter of immigrants who valued education above all else, about the software she coded at 19 that eventually became Chen Innovations Foundation, about the loneliness of success. He shares his childhood in foster care, the high school woodshop teacher who recognized his talent, the years working odd jobs while creating furniture in rented garage spaces, the constant struggle until she intervened. Their friendship grows in these shared truths, built on the unexpected foundation of that rainy bus stop encounter. Alexandra finds in Marcus something she's missed for years, someone who speaks to her without agenda or calculation, who challenges her ideas not to impress, but because he truly disagrees, who sees the woman beneath the wealth. Marcus discovers in Alexandra a brilliant mind and unexpected vulnerability moments when her carefully maintained poise slips to reveal genuine uncertainty. Her dry humor that emerges when comfortable, her passion for creating beautiful things that shape human experience. The attraction between them builds in small moments, her hand lingering on his arm while examining a joint technique, his eyes meeting hers across the workshop, conversations that drift into personal terrain before retreating to safer ground. Neither acknowledges this growing current directly. After a dinner where the conversation flows particularly well, they walk along the waterfront. Seattle's lights reflect in Puget Sound, a mirror image of the stars hidden behind city glare. "Would this have happened if you'd known who I was that day?" she asks suddenly. "Would you have given me your last $10 if you'd recognized me as Alexandra Chen?" The question carries weight beyond its surface. "I'd like to think so," he answers carefully. "But honestly, I don't know." She nods, appreciating his candor. "And now," she continues, her voice softer, "who do you see when you look at me?" Marcus hesitates, understanding the real question. He sees the billionaire, yes, the power she wields, the empire she built, the inequity between them that cannot be ignored. But he also sees the woman caught in rain without bus fare, the passionate designer, the person seeking authentic connection. I'm still figuring that out, he admits. And you? Who do you see when you look at me? Alexandra's expression reveals her own conflict attraction, tempered by caution, interest shadowed by experience. Someone I'm afraid to misinterpret, she answers honestly. Someone whose perception of me I cannot bear to doubt. They stand at the waterfront railing, possibility suspended between them like the mist over the Sound, neither quite ready to reach across the divide their circumstances have created. The text message arrives on a Wednesday afternoon, while Marcus is applying the final coat of oil to a walnut credenza. Dinner at my place Friday, 8 p.m. I'd like to show you something I've been working on. Address to follow. The address, when it arrives, belongs to the glass-sheathed tower overlooking Lake Union, 52 stories, of Seattle's most exclusive real estate. Marcus spends Thursday evening at department stores he'd normally never enter, purchasing a shirt that costs more than his weekly grocery budget. The expense feels justified for his first visit to Alexandra's home. Friday evening he passes through 3 separate security checkpoints before reaching the private elevator to the penthouse. Each interaction, the valet who takes his 15-year-old car with barely concealed surprise, the concierge who double-checks his ID, the security guard who scans him with professional suspicion, reinforces his sense of trespassing in a world not meant for him. The elevator opens directly into Alexandra's foyer, a minimalist space of white marble and museum-worthy art. Before he can process the surroundings, he registers voices, multiple conversations, laughter, the unmistakable atmosphere of a gathering in progress. Alexandra appears from around a corner, stunning in a simple black dress that suggests casual elegance beyond his sartorial vocabulary. Her smile falters briefly when she sees his expression. "Marcus, you made it." She kisses his cheek, a gesture that feels suddenly formal rather than intimate. "Come, there are people I'd like you to meet." The penthouse unfolds into a great room with floor-to-ceiling windows, framing Seattle's skyline like a living painting. A dozen people in expensive tailoring stand holding crystal tumblers and flutes of champagne. Silver trays of canapes circulate via white-gloved servers. "I thought," Marcus begins, but Alexandra is already guiding him toward 3 men in conversation. "Jackson, Paul, Richard, this is Marcus Reed, our most promising new craftsman at Lockwood and Hayes." Her hand rests lightly on his back. "Marcus, meet my executive team at Chen Innovations." Jackson, Chen no relation, as he immediately clarifies, is Alexandra's CFO. Paul Westerly, her chief legal counsel. Richard Kim, head of global operations. Their handshakes are firm, their smiles professionally diplomatic, their eyes evaluating. "The furniture maker," Jackson says, the slight emphasis suggesting manual labor rather than artistry. "Alexandra mentioned you're doing something traditional." "Woodworking," Marcus clarifies. "Yes, fascinating career choice in the digital age." Paul swirls amber liquid in his glass. "Almost quaint." The conversation continues in this vain questions phrased as polite interest that somehow highlight the gulf between tech executives worth millions and a craftsman who, until recently, counted bus fare before spending it. Throughout the evening, Alexandra is pulled in multiple directions, introducing Marcus to clusters of people before being drawn away to discuss quarterly projections, European expansion plans, acquisition strategies, He stands awkwardly at the periphery of conversations about vacation homes in Santorini and private school admissions. A server offers champagne. Marcus accepts, grateful for something to do with his hands. The Esposito acquisition timeline concerns me, he overhears Jackson saying to Alexandra near the windows, their backs to the room. As does your recent distraction. My personal life isn't relevant to this discussion, Alexandra replies, tension evident in her posture. It becomes relevant when you bring your charity case to strategy meetings. Jackson's voice lowers, but not enough. The board talks, Alexandra. They question your focus lately. This woodworker project... He has a name, Alexandra interjects sharply. Yes, and a background that's raising eyebrows. The press would have a field day. Billionaire's bus stop boyfriend. Can you imagine the headlines? Marcus sets his untouched champagne on a side table, the crystal making a sharp sound against marble. Several heads turn. Alexandra meets his eyes across the room, reading his expression with immediate comprehension. He moves toward the elevator without saying goodbye, shame and anger burning equally in his chest. Alexandra follows, reaching him at the elevator doors. Marcus, wait, it's not a woodworker project. His voice remains quiet, controlled. A charity case? Jackson doesn't speak for me, but he speaks about me, and you didn't correct him. The elevator arrives with a discreet chime. Thank you for an educational evening, Ms. Chen. As the doors close between them, Marcus sees something he never expected on Alexandra's face. Helplessness. It offers no comfort as the elevator descends 52 floors, each level increasing the distance between their worlds. Monday morning, Marcus submits a formal request for reassignment to Lockwood and Hayes' Restoration Division. The paperwork requires no explanation, but Thomas Lockwood studies Marcus's face across his desk with quiet assessment. The restoration team is across town. His fingers tap the transfer request. Smaller workshop, older projects, less visibility. I'm aware, Marcus replies, maintaining eye contact despite the urge to look away. Lockwood sighs. You know Alexandra personally requested you for the Richardson Commission. Any of our craftsmen could handle it. Not according to her. Lockwood studies him another moment before signing the form. Effective next Monday. Until then, complete your current projects. The week passes in meticulous work. Marcus arrives earlier each morning, stays later each evening, speaks only when necessary. His colleagues sense the shift, but don't inquire. In the rarefied atmosphere of master craftsmen, personal space is sacred. Wednesday, a package arrives at his workstation, a small wooden box of Japanese origin, centuries old, containing woodworking implements of extraordinary quality. The accompanying note bears a single line in elegant handwriting. I should have warned you. I'm sorry. Marcus places the note inside the box, closes the lid, and returns to the chair spindles he's shaping. Thursday, his phone displays 3 missed calls from her number. He doesn't return them. Friday, Alexandra herself appears at the workshop, dressed with deliberate understatement, her security detail nowhere visible. Conversations falter as she moves directly toward Marcus's station. He feels her approach like a change in atmospheric pressure. May I speak with you? Her voice carries the practiced neutrality of someone accustomed to hiding emotions. Marcus sets down his chisel, gestures to the workshop courtyard. They stand among potted Japanese maples, their red leaves providing privacy from curious eyes inside. I've been trying to reach you, she begins. I've been busy. He indicates the building behind them. Deadlines. Don't do this, Marcus. Do what exactly? Withdraw, disappear. Request reassignment without speaking to me first. Marcus studies the fine gravel beneath his feet, arranged in contemplative patterns that now seem chaotic. What happened at your penthouse clarified things. Jackson was out of line. I've addressed it. It's not about Jackson. Marcus finally meets her gaze. It's about waking up to reality. Alexandra steps closer. Which reality? The one where I'm a craftsman with foster care history and community college education, and you're, he gestures vaguely at her entirety, Alexandra Chen. That's external, superficial. Is it? His voice remains quiet, controlled. Your executive asked if I wanted cream in my coffee and looked shocked when I said yes, as if knowing how I take coffee confirmed something fundamental about my class position. Alexandra flinches. That's his prejudice, not mine. It's the water you swim in, the world you inhabit. Back in her penthouse, Alexandra paces the empty expanse of her living room. Floor-to-ceiling windows frame a city growing distant below, lights blinking on as evening descends. The space, 12,000 square feet of architectural brilliance, suddenly feels hollow, its perfection sterile. She picks up her phone, begins typing a message, deletes it, begins again, stops. On her coffee table sits a small wooden box, the match to the one she sent Marcus. Inside lies a crude wooden figure she carved at age 8, her first creation. She lifts it, feeling the childish knife marks her fingers left decades ago. For the first time in years, Alexandra Chen understands what it means to want something she cannot simply acquire. In his apartment, Marcus sits at his workbench, hands idle. The half-completed jewelry box he began months ago, the one inspired by his changed circumstances, remains untouched since the night of the gala. Its unfinished state mocks him. He reaches for his phone when it chimes with a text message notification, then withdraws his hand without checking it. Outside his window, rain begins, a soft, persistent Seattle rhythm that recalls a bus stop, an umbrella, an unexpected intersection of lives. Marcus picks up his tools and begins working on the box again, each precise cut an attempt to focus on what he can control, even as his mind returns repeatedly to a connection he cannot allow himself to pursue, one where every interaction would carry the weight of imbalance, where he would forever question the foundation of his own worth. His hands shape the wood with perfect precision while his heart remains unresolved. 6 months after joining Lockwood & Hayes, Marcus has established a quiet rhythm in the restoration division. The workshop occupies the ground floor of a century-old brick warehouse, its windows partially obscured by climbing ivy, its interior smelling of hide glue and beeswax polish, rather than the contemporary finishes used in the main facility. Here, he rebuilds what time has broken Chippendale chairs with loose joints, Victorian writing desks with water damage, Art Nouveau cabinets whose veneer has begun to separate. The work requires different skills than creating new pieces, more detective than inventor, more historian than artist. He finds unexpected peace in this repair of damaged things. He hasn't seen Alexandra in 4 months. Occasionally he hears her name mentioned, a new acquisition, a revolutionary software patent, a profile in Fortune. The distance has not diminished his awareness of her, merely pushed it to a manageable periphery. Then comes the Tuesday when Vanessa Hayes appears at his workbench, her expression uncharacteristically tight. She waits until the other craftsmen move to the break room before speaking. "Have you seen today's business news?" Marcus shakes his head, applying a thin layer of shellac to a restored table edge. She places her tablet before him. The Wall Street Journal headline reads, "Hostile takeover, bid threatens Chen Innovations. Board questions founder's leadership." Marcus sets down his brush carefully. "I don't understand. Alexandra built that company from nothing. Venture capital firm Blackwood Partners has been quietly acquiring shares. They've aligned with 3 board members to challenge her control." Vanessa's fingers tap the tablet, scrolling to reveal further details. They're citing erratic decision-making and concerning personal entanglements as evidence she's lost objectivity. The language strikes Marcus like physical blows. His eyes catch specific phrases from the article. Unusual interest in traditional craftsmanship ventures unrelated to core business, personal involvement with employees of subsidiary companies, questionable judgment in professional boundaries. "They're talking about me," he says quietly, the realization settling like lead in his stomach. "They're using her friendship with me against her." Yes. Vanessa's directness has always been her defining quality. The board meeting is tomorrow. The vote could remove her from operational control of her own company. Marcus stands, his restoration work forgotten. "This is wrong. I need to—" "What?" Vanessa interrupts. "What exactly do you think you can do? This is billionaire chess, Marcus. We're not even pieces on their board." "I'm the evidence they're using against her. That makes me involved whether I want to be or not." He begins cleaning his brushes with methodical precision, mind racing ahead. The company Alexandra built from her teenage coding project, the innovation hub she cultivated, the vision she's pursued, all threatened because of conversations over coffee, because she saw something in his craftsmanship, because they connected across worlds that weren't meant to intersect. "Where is she now?" he asks finally. "Chen Tower downtown, preparing for tomorrow's fight." Vanessa studies him with newfound curiosity. "What are you thinking?" Marcus carefully returns the restored Sheraton table leg to its protective covering. That sometimes the things most worth saving aren't made of wood. The Chen Innovations boardroom occupies the entire 49th floor of the company's downtown headquarters, a circular space of polished walnut and glass, where 23 board members sit in ergonomic chairs that cost more than Marcus's monthly rent. The central table alone represents tens of thousands in materials and craftsmanship. Marcus appreciates these details as he stands in the lobby, arguing with security. "Sir, the board meeting is closed to the public," the guard explains for the 3rd time, his patience professional but waning. "I cannot allow you access without clearance." "Then call up to Alexandra Chen's office," Marcus persists. "Tell her Marcus Reed needs 5 minutes. Ms. Chen is currently in session with the board and has left explicit instructions. The elevator doors open, revealing Thomas Lockwood in an impeccable suit. His eyebrows rise at the sight of Marcus in workshop clothes, a fine dusting of sawdust still clinging to his shoulders. "Mr. Reed, this is unexpected." "Thomas, I need to get into that meeting." Lockwood studies him for a long moment. "You understand what's happening up there?" A corporate execution. Marcus meets his employer's gaze directly, based partly on my existence. Something in Lockwood's expression shifts. He produces his security badge, holding it against the elevator panel. "You'll have approximately 30 seconds before security escorts you out. Make them count." The boardroom falls silent when Marcus enters. 23 faces turn toward him with expressions ranging from surprise to outrage. At the head of the table, Alexandra freezes mid-sentence, her composure momentarily fractured by his appearance. "This is a private meeting," barks a silver-haired man Marcus recognizes as William Blackwood of Blackwood Partners. "Security." "I only need 1 minute," Marcus announces, stepping further into the room. His heart pounds, but his craftsman's hands remain steady. "You're making decisions based on incomplete information." Alexandra stands. "Marcus, you shouldn't—" "Ms. Chen's judgment is precisely what we're questioning," interrupts a woman in a charcoal suit. "And this interruption validates our concerns about inappropriate personal entanglements." "That's exactly what I'm here to address." Marcus feels security personnel entering behind him but continues speaking, his voice gaining strength. "You're using my relationship with Alexandra Chen as evidence against her leadership. That gives me the right to testify." The room quiets, curiosity temporarily overruling protocol. "My name is Marcus Reed. I'm a furniture maker who gave Alexandra Chen $10 at a bus stop when she had nothing. She was conducting what you've called her eccentric hobby, understanding how regular people live. You're portraying this as erratic behavior, but I've seen corporate leaders who've never spent a day understanding the world their products exist in." He looks around the table, meeting eyes briefly before moving to the next person. "You've built spreadsheets about her supposed distraction. What you haven't measured is her humanity, her determination to stay connected to reality when wealth could easily isolate her." "This is touching," Blackwood interjects, "but hardly relevant to shareholder interests." "Isn't it?" Marcus challenges. "Chen Innovations creates products for people across economic spectrums. How many of you have ridden public transportation this year? How many have spoken with people who make minimum wage? Alexandra didn't just recognize my craftsmanship, she recognized the value of perspective outside this room." He turns to face Alexandra directly. "The woman you're trying to remove created a culture where talent matters more than pedigree, where innovation comes from understanding human needs rather than market trends. That's not erratic leadership, it's visionary." A board member with glasses leans forward. "You were given a job because of a chance encounter. That's hardly sound business practice." "I was given a job because I'm excellent at what I do," Marcus corrects firmly. "The chance encounter simply removed barriers that would have prevented my talent from being recognized. How many brilliant minds have you missed because they didn't attend the right schools or move in your social circles?" Security finally reaches him, hands touching his shoulders. Marcus doesn't resist, but delivers his final words with quiet intensity. "If you remove Alexandra Chen for seeing value where others don't, you're not protecting this company. You're ensuring its slow death by conformity." As security guides him toward the door, he catches Alexandra's expression, surprise giving way to something deeper. Behind her, several board members lean toward each other, whispering urgently. 3 hours later, the news breaks. Chen Innovations Board votes 14-9 to maintain current leadership structure. The evening air carries a chill when Alexandra finally exits Chen Innovations headquarters. 3 hours of emergency board meetings, legal consultations, and strategy discussions have left her simultaneously exhausted and electric with vindication. The board's 14-9 vote to maintain her leadership position should feel like triumph. Instead, she feels only the hollow echo of battles she never wanted to fight. Security personnel flank her as she approaches the waiting company car, its engine already purring in quiet luxury at the curb. Then she sees him. Marcus sits on a concrete planter across the plaza, hands in his jacket pockets against the evening cold. He hasn't changed clothes since the board meeting, still wearing his workshop attire, a fine powdering of sawdust visible even at this distance. The security team tenses, moving subtly to intercept, but Alexandra raises a hand to halt them. "Wait here," she instructs, and walks alone across the corporate plaza. Marcus stands as she approaches, his expression unreadable in the blue-tinged light of surrounding skyscrapers. For several seconds, neither speaks. Around them, downtown Seattle continues its evening rhythm, professionals hurrying toward parking garages, restaurant doors opening to release bursts of laughter, traffic signals changing in orderly progression. "You didn't have to wait," she finally says. "I needed to know the outcome." His voice betrays no emotion. "I kept control. Your intervention helped sway several key votes." He nods once, his jawline tightening briefly. "Good, that's good." They fall silent again. Alexandra's security detail watches from a respectful distance, their professional vigilance a constant reminder of her position. A light breeze catches her hair, and she tucks it behind one ear. A small, unconscious gesture of vulnerability that contrasts with her usual composed public appearance. "Marcus, what you did today was necessary," he interrupts. "They were using our connection against you. I couldn't let that stand." "Even after everything," his eyes meet hers directly. "Even after everything." Alexandra glances around the corporate plaza, the gleaming tower behind them with her name on it, the security team, the waiting car. All symbols of the world she's built, the barriers she's constructed. Suddenly, impulsively, she gestures to a small courtyard area adjacent to the building. "Will you walk with me just for a moment?" The courtyard features a small reflecting pool and sculptural seating, a quiet pocket amid urban density. Security maintains distance, positioning themselves at entrances while allowing visual privacy. Alexandra sits on a curved bench, granite polished smooth beneath her fingertips. Marcus remains standing, his craftsman's posture straight-backed and patient. "I've spent the past 6 months avoiding this conversation," she begins. "The irony is that while my board accused me of distraction, I've been more focused than ever on what truly matters. Watching you, your integrity, your passion for creating beautiful things, your kindness without agenda, made something painfully clear to me." She looks up at him, vulnerability replacing her usual careful composure. "Money isolated me, Marcus. Success built walls I didn't even recognize until I stood in the rain without a bus pass and someone treated me like a human being rather than a concept or a resource." Marcus shifts his weight, discomfort visible in the set of his shoulders. "Alexandra, please," she interrupts gently. "Let me finish. This isn't easy for me." He nods, silent again. "I've had advisors, employees, partners, rivals, people seeking my funding, my connections, my influence. What I haven't had for a very long time is someone who simply sees me. Not my net worth or my company or my power, just me." Her voice remains steady even as her words expose unprecedented vulnerability. "You gave me that, and it changed everything." A nightbird calls somewhere above them, the sound echoing off glass buildings. "The greatest gift wasn't what I gave you through employment," she continues. "It was what you showed me about living authentically, about making something with your hands that outlasts quarterly reports, about seeing value beyond what can be monetized. Marcus's expression softens, the defensive barrier he's maintained beginning to lower. "I know the circumstances of our worlds make this complicated," Alexandra says, finally standing to face him directly. "I know there's an imbalance that can't be ignored, but I need you to know that somewhere between that rainy bus stop and today, I fell in love with you." The words hang between them, stripped of pretense or calculation, perhaps the most honest statement Alexandra Chen has made in years. "I understand if you feel a relationship between us would be fundamentally unequal or impossible," she adds quietly. "I've considered those same concerns, but I also know that pretending these feelings don't exist hasn't diminished them. If anything, distance has only confirmed what I already knew." She takes a breath, delivering the final truth. "I'm not asking for an answer. I just couldn't let another day pass without being honest with you. Whatever you decide, your position at Lockwood and Hayes is secure. This changes nothing professionally." The reflection pool captures fragments of city lights, breaking them into trembling patterns across the water's surface, intricate, beautiful, and impossible to hold. The urban courtyard grows quiet as evening deepens, office lights dimming in surrounding buildings. Alexandra's confession hangs between them, altering the air like a change in atmospheric pressure. Marcus stands motionless, his craftsman's hands always so certain with wood and tools now restless at his sides. "I've spent months trying to convince myself that what I felt for you was nothing more than gratitude or admiration," he finally says, his voice low. "That putting distance between us was the rational choice." Alexandra remains silent, allowing him the space to find his words. "But rationality fails when I think about you," he continues. "When I remember how you looked at my work that first day, not with condescension, but with genuine understanding. How you listen when others speak, despite having every excuse not to. How you built an empire but still notice the grain patterns in a piece of walnut." A subtle shift in Alexandra's posture reveals her careful containment of hope. "I've been afraid," Marcus admits. "Not of your success or your wealth specifically, but of what they represent. The fundamental imbalance between us." "Marcus," he raises a hand gently, "please let me finish." She nods, mirroring his earlier patience. "I grew up with nothing that wasn't given to me by the state or earned through my own hands. My foster homes taught me that relationships always have power dynamics. Someone always holds more cards." His voice remains steady despite the vulnerability of his words. "When someone has everything and you have comparatively nothing, how do you ever know if what exists between you is real or simply the product of uneven circumstances?" Alexandra's eyes reflect understanding beyond sympathy. "I've asked myself the same question from the opposite perspective." "I know." Marcus takes a step closer. "That's part of why He pauses, then commits to the truth. "Part of why I love you." The words settle between them, neither rushed nor hesitant, simply true. "But love without equality feels unstable," he continues, "precarious." Alexandra watches him carefully, sensing more to come. Marcus reaches for his wallet, the same worn leather one he'd pulled from his pocket months ago at a rain-soaked bus stop. From it, he extracts a crisp $10 bill, clearly new, clearly intentional. "When we met, I gave you $10, he says, holding the bill between them. "It seemed insignificant to me then, just helping someone who needed bus fare. I had no idea that moment would change the entire trajectory of my life." He extends the money toward her. "Take it. Let's start over, as equals." Alexandra looks at the offered bill, understanding immediately the weight of the gesture. Her fingers tremble slightly as she accepts it. The CEO, who makes billion-dollar decisions without hesitation, moved by a simple $10 bill. "Equals," she repeats softly, studying the currency in her hands. Then, with deliberate care, she folds the bill precisely down the center. Her manicured fingernails, practical despite her wealth, create a sharp crease. With one smooth motion, she tears the bill along the fold, the sound sharp in the quiet courtyard. She keeps one half, extending the other back to Marcus. "We're both giving," she says, pressing the torn half into his palm. "We're both receiving. That's what love is." Marcus stares at the half bill in his hand, worthless as currency now, priceless as symbol. "Not perfect equality," Alexandra continues, her voice gaining certainty. "That's impossible between any two people, regardless of bank accounts. But mutual vulnerability, mutual commitment." Her eyes shine with unshed tears. "Mutual trust." Marcus closes his fingers around the torn bill, then reaches for her hand holding the matching half. Their fingers intertwine, the two halves of currency pressed between their palms. "I don't know how this works," he admits. "There's no blueprint for this." "There rarely is for anything worth building," she replies. "But you taught me something important, Marcus. The most beautiful things aren't mass-produced or perfectly engineered. They're handcrafted with all the unique variations that entails." He steps closer, eliminating the remaining distance between them. In the reflection pool beside them, their silhouettes merge into a single shape as Marcus brings his free hand to Alexandra's face, his fingertips gentle against her cheek. "Then let's build something beautiful," he says, and lowers his lips to hers. In his pocket, half of a $10 bill, a fragment that means everything. Rain falls on Seattle, gentle, persistent April showers that gleam on sidewalks and collect in shallow puddles. The city continues its eternal cycle of growth and renewal, cranes dotting the skyline, new buildings rising beside the old. At the corner of 4th and Pine, a bus pulls away from a stop, revealing a recently installed bench unlike any other in the transit system. Crafted of sustainable teak with graceful joinery that requires no metal fasteners, the bench curves slightly to accommodate the human form, both beautiful and functional in its simplicity. Marcus adjusts the temporary covering protecting the bench from the weather, his movements precise as he prepares for the small ceremony scheduled to begin in 20 minutes. His workshop clothes have been exchanged for a simple charcoal suit, though the faint scent of linseed oil still clings to his hands, an indelible marker of his craft that no amount of soap ever fully removes. "Perfect timing," Alexandra says as she approaches, holding 2 coffee cups. Her attire is elegant but understated, her only jewelry a thin gold chain from which hangs half of a laminated $10 bill. She hands him 1 cup, keeping the other for herself. "The mayor just texted. She's running 10 minutes late." "Some things never change," Marcus replies with a small smile, accepting the coffee. Their fingers brush in the exchange, a simple touch that still carries meaning. Around them, city workers finish last-minute preparations for the unveiling. The Chen Reed Foundation's first community installation has drawn modest media attention. A human interest story about a transportation initiative aimed at dignity for commuters. What the cameras don't capture is the personal significance of this particular location. "Nervous?" Alexandra asks, noting the subtle tension in his posture. Marcus shakes his head. "Just thinking about odds." Which ones? That of all the bus stops in Seattle, I would be at this one. That of all the days, you would forget your pass on that one. His eyes meet hers. That $10 could change everything. Alexandra's free hand finds his, their fingers intertwining with practiced familiarity. The butterfly effect of kindness. A year has transformed them both. Marcus now divides his time between his own commissions and directing Lockwood and Hayes's apprenticeship program, identifying talented youth from disadvantaged backgrounds and providing not just training but mentorship. His first class of 6 apprentices has already produced work worthy of exhibition. Alexandra still leads Chen Innovations, but with adjusted priorities. She sold her penthouse, moving to a modest craftsman home they renovated together in Madison Park. The billions she once directed toward expansion have been partially redirected toward sustainable technologies and community investment. Together, they created the foundation whose name they share, an organization that provides small, targeted assistance to individuals experiencing temporary financial crises, bus fare for job interviews, prescription costs during insurance gaps, security deposits for first apartments, small amounts that mean everything in crucial moments. The mayor arrives, followed by transit officials and community representatives. Cameras position themselves as the ceremonial unveiling approaches. Marcus steps forward to remove the covering from the bench, revealing not just the masterful woodwork, but the small bronze plaque centered on the backrest. Alexandra reads the inscription silently, the words now as familiar as her own heartbeat. Sometimes the smallest act of kindness returns the greatest gift of all. Later, when the officials have departed and the cameras gone, Marcus and Alexandra remain, sitting together on the bench as buses come and go. They hold between them the remaining half of his original $10 bill, now framed for preservation, studying it with quiet reverence. "Worth every penny," he says. Alexandra leans her head against his shoulder, watching Seattle flow around them. "And then some,"